To be or not to be, that is the question. Wrote William Shakespeare, or did he? History Rebel investigates. In case you didn't know, there is a long-standing mystery around the true identity of the greatest writer in English language. For centuries, it has been debated whether Shakespeare of Stratford actually wrote the works that bear his name. After all, pen names have always been very popular with writers. Perhaps the name Shakespeare was an alias for someone who was following the trend, or didn't want to go public. Let's make it clear that the issue at question here is not whether William Shakespeare from Stratford existed, nor whether the author William Shakespeare wrote his plays. Both are true. Nevertheless, it does not prove that the two persons active under the similar sounding names were the same physical person. Shakespeare was a poet with the most impressive linguistic capabilities in history. His writing exhibits encyclopedic breadth of learning and knowledge of the world. He also had an intimate insider knowledge of European court life and politics. Since many texts used as source for Shakespeare's plays had never been translated into English, the author had to be a highly educated person with knowledge of languages such as Latin, Greek, Italian, French, and Spanish. However, nothing of that sort fits biography and background of Shakespeare from Stratford. He comes from an illiterate family, has no record of any schooling, has no travel experience outside of England, and he has not spent a single day at court. Out of 70 documents about the life of the Stratford man, none indicates that he has ever been a writer of anything. Not one single manuscript in his own hand, not a single personal letter written by him or to him. Not a single book was owned by him. That seems a bit odd, don't you think? In those days, there was no Google, no Wikipedia, not even public access to libraries. How could an untraveled, poorly schooled commoner have written so widely on topics about which he would have had no first-hand knowledge? In fact, there is no contemporary evidence whatsoever to link the two Shakespeares. The first evidence to identify writer William Shakespeare with Stratford-upon-Avon appeared in 1623, when the Folio was published 7 years after Stratford man has died. So, there must be some solid evidence in that Folio to link two Shakespeares together, right? Let's look at it. Ben Jonson, the editor of the Folio, in his preface refers to Shakespeare as Sweet Swan of Avon, since Stratford is on the river Avon, and in 16th century there happened to live a man called William Shakespeare with theatre experience. Scholars assume that it must be the same man. This is very circumstantial evidence in my opinion, especially since we know that Avon is another name for Hampton Court Palace, the place where Shakespeare's plays have been performed for Queen Elizabeth and King James. Therefore, contextually, it is way more plausible that Ben Jonson was referring to Hampton Court rather than Stratford-upon-Avon. Besides, how do we know that Ben Jonson even knew the true identity of William Shakespeare? I hope that I have convinced you of the obvious flaws of the status quo view of Shakespeare. The historical and biographical evidence simply does not support the claim that Stratfordian man was a writer. It is much more likely that William Shakespeare was a pen name for an author of unconfirmed identity. Any of these are much more plausible candidates for authorship of Shakespearean plays. But that's another story. Thanks for watching and keep on digging!